And it's like, here we see further development of Kanan and his try-hard mannish ways juxtaposed against Jukebox, right? Where you look at it, I kind of got the feeling from the beginning that Aisha liked Jukebox, but it was kind of unclear if that was like just as a friend or if she was romantically interested in her. It started feeling like it was leaning more that way, but wasn't exactly clear, but it's made clear here. And I thought it was like a nice touch. Like, you look at the contrast between it, where Jukebox never made assumptions or anything like that. She didn't push up on Aisha or anything like that. I mean, Kanan didn't really push up on Aisha or Crystal. Both of, he expressed his interest in Aisha, and then Crystal really pushed up on him. But, like, you look at the way that, like, he's now treating Crystal, and it's like, not to say that she deserves it, but, they're being intimate, which I really don't want on my TV screen. But, they've been intimate, and Crystal is now asking about, if they're together and what's the status of their relationship and this and that, and Kanan just kind of tries to brush her off, only for her to turn around and say that, like, her period is late, that she might be pregnant. And it's like, well, young lady, this is probably a conversation that you and Kanan should have had before all of this canoodling began. As far as, like, what is this that's going on? Because you weren't asking about this when you invited him over to your house and were talking big girl stuff. And it's like, you contrast these two teenage relationships, where it's like Kanan's relationship with Crystal, or whatever that situation is, that's a mess in the making right there. And then on the other side, you have what's actually like a sweet, naturally progressing relationship between Jukebox and Aisha. And even at that, but it shows you that regardless of whatever problems and tension and stuff between themselves, that they don't allow outsiders to come in between. Because you look at it, Jukebox and Kanan got into it about Kanan double dipping in Jukebox's group, right? But as Kanan expresses to Crystal, that they kind of quieted things down because of Jukebox. Kanan didn't want to cause any problems any further problems within the group, which would then cause problems for Jukebox, right? And that at the same time, that Jukebox was probably interested in Aisha, but couldn't exactly read what her interest level was. And it's like, even with her expressing interest here in Jukebox now, she expresses, well, you were talking to Kanan before. So it's like, it's this thing of them, regardless of them having drama between themselves, that they won't, like, allow outsiders to come and, like, drive a wedge between them, right? They'll argue between themselves, but they won't go out of their way to cause harm to the other person, right? Like, Kanan, once he wised up to it or was called out on it, he tried to slow things up, or it could have been an excuse, but kind of tried to tidy things up a little bit so that he wouldn't cause problems in Jukebox's group. And on the flip side of that, you see it that Jukebox was likely interested in Aisha, and Aisha was interested in Jukebox, but Jukebox didn't pursue it once Aisha had started talking to Kanan. So it's like the family is dysfunctional, but at the same time, you can see that there's still solid principles that exist within the two different generations, right? That as family, we can argue, fuss, and fight amongst ourselves, but we don't allow outsiders to come and cause problems within our relationships. There's a line. And I think that's how things should be. There's this conversation with Jukebox where initially she meets up with Aisha and they talk about her, where she had been kind of having second thoughts about enlisting in the military, as it was looking like things might work out with the group, and so she was going to pursue that. But now with the group having fallen apart, she now has, like, the military. And it's a pretty interesting comment to make. And Aisha points out that Jukebox looks at it as, thus far she stayed out of her family's business, but yet somehow it still manages to disrupt her life, right? In killing Nicole, in her mother, being killed, And then now, where she had this opportunity to be a part of what could have been a very successful group, that falls apart as well because of her family's drug dealing. And basically, Jukebox looks at it as joining the military would offer an opportunity to get out of Jamaica and, in a sense, to feel safe. Because being here in Queens with all of the stuff that her family is into and that they have going on, it can bring harm to her. It's interesting because from there, we then see her and Kanan walking together. And again, it's this thing of where despite them fussing and fighting amongst themselves, they're still under pressure, they'll come together, you know? And so it's like, while Jukebox and Kanan had drama, here we see them meeting up, right? And it's kind of like this recurring thing of RAQ and Kanan kind of using Jukebox as like a go-between, you know, where RAQ used to use Jukebox to kind of keep an eye on Kanan, and here we see it that Kanan meets up with Jukebox because he wants to pass along the message to RAQ and the rest of the family that he didn't have anything to do with this attempt on her life. And as they're walking talking about this, you know, they also talk about her going to the military and whatnot, where, again, it's this thing about the pathways that these two teenagers see for themselves, where Jukebox is trying to get out and beyond this business and situation that the family has set up for itself here in South Jamaica, right? She wants to get out of Southside, right? To see, do, and experience more, to see more of what the world has to offer. Whereas Kanan, when you think back on it, really from the very first episode, has this more limited view where he's afraid to leave the South Side, right? Like, he sees this as his place. And it's like where from the very beginning, RAQ has been trying to push him out of the South Side. He's kind of digging in his heels that this is where he's from. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. And this is where he's going to die. You know, and so it's like, it's just, these are two kids that were raised alongside each other, but they have just such drastically different outlooks on the world and their place in it.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.